What's up, everybody? You are watching BamaInsider.com. This is our weekly recruiting show with Andrew Bone, the expert, the guru in recruiting. And Andrew, a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to get right into it. Obviously, another big commitment today for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And Elijah Pritchett, an absolute monster. But before we get into that tonight, guys, hit the like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Get in the comments. We want to hear from you. We're going to take your questions at the end of the show. So please get active tonight and talk to us. We want to hear your thoughts on Pritchett and the rest of the world of recruiting. But Andrew, how are you doing tonight as we get into the show?
Man, I'm doing great. It's obviously a big day for Alabama as it picked up commitment number 15 from Elijah Pritchett. And we talked about Pritchett in our video posted earlier today, so we won't get too deep about his commitment. But obviously, a big pickup for Alabama. This is a guy that they recruited for a long time, really since the early stages of his recruitment. I remember when he visited for the spring game back in April with his family, returned for the official visit back in June, attended the Champions Cookout in July, and then attended the Mercer game. Everybody was wondering, why would you attend the Mercer game, when you have some other games coming up? Well, obviously the home schedule didn't really look too pretty in the month of September, and he was committing on September 28th, so it wasn't like he was going to be able to squeeze in that trip for the Ole Miss game, and had some plans for last weekend to go over to Georgia. So not really a big deal, obviously, with him going to Mercer. He was at the Florida State Notre Dame game at the beginning of the season. Everybody thought, oh man, him going to that game, that's going to tilt it in Florida State's favor. And maybe it did for a moment. Maybe he was leaning that way. But then, after his visit to Alabama back in July, after that Champions Cookout, having a conversation with him and him telling me that he had a better connection with players at Alabama, commitments, better relationship with those guys than anywhere else. I really felt like because of that, it was going to be in Alabama's favor. And of course, I entered a prediction for Elijah Pritchett to Alabama back in May, and never really wavered on that. I always kind of felt like he was Alabama's to lose until I heard otherwise. And even though we heard a lot of Florida State speculation after that trip for the Notre Dame game, I just said, let him get back to campus. Let him get back into Tuscaloosa. His family's very comfortable. It was, the only school really that his entire family visited. I'm not talking about his mom and dad. I'm talking about grandparents, uncles, cousins, everybody. I mean, they all went to that cookout back in July, and I felt like that was kind of a telling sign as to which way he was leaning in his recruitment. And ended up coming back for that Mercer game, and told Coach Saban during that trip that he was ready, that he was solid with his commitment to, or not solid, but he wanted to solidify his commitment to the University of Alabama. So he's known for a few weeks, even though he took that trip to Georgia last weekend. We never really thought that Georgia was really much of a contender for him. Always felt like it was Alabama or Florida State when he made that trip back to Tuscaloosa. It was a done deal for him and his family. So joins a already talented offensive line class, joining Tyler Booker and Dane Shore. We know what Alabama signed in 2021 on the offensive line. This is going to be a extremely talented group. Everybody always says iron sharpens iron, and they're going to be challenging each other, pushing each other, and obviously Alabama's going to play the best players possible. But you got to like what this offensive line group looks like here in the future with the guys they brought in last year and the guys they're bringing in this year's class. They're really setting up pretty nicely to have a deep, really talented roster at the position.
Just such a great young core of offensive linemen. They're bringing in Elijah Pritchett, the next in line here. And, it poses a question, Bone. What does Alabama do with offensive linemen, the way they're going to recruit them now moving forward? Is there any other targets they're maybe thinking of, or is Pritchett maybe the last guy that they want out of the class of 22?
Yeah, I think when people see a third offensive line commitment, especially a big one like Elijah Pritchett jumping on board to go along with the other guys that are currently committed after last year's class, everybody probably just automatically thinks, they're done at the position. Let's worry about defensive line or linebackers or wherever else. Let's focus on something else. But there are some guys that they're still recruiting, guys that are planning on coming in for official visits. And if one of those guys wants to commit to Alabama, guess what? Alabama's not going to say no. These are guys that they are heavily recruiting now. If Elijah Pritchett jumped on board today and they said, all right, reached out to different recruits, different offensive linemen, and said, hey, no longer, can take you, no longer have a spot, they would probably do that. But they're still recruiting guys. They're still trying to bring guys in. So, should prove that, they're still very much interested in taking some more offensive linemen in this class. Some guys to kind of watch out for. The first guy to really watch in terms of just coming in for this weekend is Devin Campbell. Now, in my opinion, probably on the outside looking in for him. He's a 5-star offensive lineman from Arlington, Texas, has Alabama in his top 5. Kind of surprised me a little bit that he had Alabama in his top 5, not because Alabama's not a great program. It's just he hasn't visited Tuscaloosa before. So he wanted to take an official visit to Alabama. It's coming in this weekend. So this is going to be a big visit for him. Obviously, big game, going to be a great atmosphere. So we'll see how his weekend goes in Tuscaloosa, see if Alabama can potentially, get more involved with him and become really a top contender. But right now, in terms of his top 5, I would say Alabama's probably, sitting at 5 for him at this time. So we'll see if they make a big move. But obviously, the future cast right there, 100% Texas. I know many people feel like he's going to stay in state, go to Texas. Texas A&M's in it. LSU is in it. Oklahoma, USC. But I don't think he's going to USC. But I do think that Alabama, has some ground to make up for him. And we'll see kind of what happens after this weekend. A couple other guys that we've talked about a lot throughout the year. Julian Armella, 5-star out of St. Thomas Aquinas down in Fort Lauderdale. He's going to be coming in for the LSU game. Now, LSU is a top contender for him. Many people feel like he's going to end up going to LSU. In the end, he has visited there before, he's visited Alabama, but hasn't been in a while. So this is going to be a big visit for him coming up for that LSU game in November. Alabama's been pushing hard for him. They really like Julian Armella a lot. Obviously, 5-star recruit, but definitely somebody that they really like and would certainly love to add in this year's class. So we'll kind of see how things go after that official visit, if they get a little bit more I don't want to say involved, but just a little bit more steam on the recruiting trail with Julian and see if they could potentially steal him away. That would be one heck of an offensive tackle class if they can bring him in too. And then you have Keante Gohan, who's a monster offensive tackle. I know some rank him as a 5-star, and the Rivals has him as a high 4-star. This is a big kid out of Kentucky. Attended Alabama's camp back in the spring, or not in the spring, but back in the summer, and he was an impressive looking kid, and definitely somebody that Alabama's kept in touch with. Has said that he's going to take all of his official visits, even though he's committed to Kentucky. But, this is a guy, well, he's not from – he's just right across the border in Kentucky. He's in Indiana, but sorry about that. He committed to Kentucky. But this is a guy that is extremely impressive. I think it's going to be tough to pull him away from his commitment. He's pretty solid, but wants to enjoy the process. And I think Alabama is certainly a school that has impressed him, and he'll get down there. So we'll kind of see how things go with him. There's a few other guys that are out there that they're still recruiting, but those are kind of the main guys that are going to be visiting and checking out Alabama this fall.
And with already such a loaded class, just getting one of these guys would mean a lot. The border's getting crazy down there. I'm with you, Bone. You got Indiana right there. You got Ohio, Kentucky. It's all a mess. But Goodwin, currently committed to Kentucky. We're going to keep an eye on him as well. Thanks for getting in the comments, guys. We got Noah Persick asking about Arch Manning. Noah, just hold on a little bit. We're going to get to it later in the show. Everybody wants to talk about Arch, and a big weekend potentially for Alabama and the Manning family as well. But let's talk about maybe who's next. Everybody is never, nobody's satisfied in this market, Andrew, being here for longer than I have. And, people after a big commitment today are already asking, well, who's next? Who does Alabama have their eye on? And maybe who do you see committing next for the Crimson Tide?
Well, I think you got to look at Jaleel Skinner, 4-star tight end out of IMG Academy. Is going to be making his decision on October the 8th. And I think Alabama's got a great chance with him. I think as of right now, Alabama's probably in the driver's seat. Now he's got 2 visits this weekend. He's going to visit Miami. Also going to check out Clemson. IMG has an off week. So he's going to try to check out a couple schools and see those programs. In my opinion, I think it really comes down to Alabama and Miami. Obviously, this is going to be a big weekend. Our big Thursday night visit for him going over to Coral Gables. But Alabama, in my opinion, is probably the leader at this time. That's who our prediction's on. So we'll see kind of how it all unfolds. That would obviously be a great tight end / athlete class with Jaleel Skinner, Elijah Brown, and Mari Niblock. So we'll see what happens there. But as of right now, I'm leaning towards Alabama with Jaleel Skinner. Another guy I think everybody should watch pretty closely. We've been talking about this guy for months. Is Barian Brown out of Nashville? One of the most explosive players in the country. In my opinion, he's a 5-star recruit. I mean, he's in the top. I think he's in the top 60 on Rivals. But man, his senior film that's been posted is extremely impressive, and I think he's an elite player, and certainly somebody that Alabama wants to add. Now, as of right now, he plans on coming to Tuscaloosa this weekend for see two teams that are high on his list, in Alabama and Ole Miss. He also likes Kentucky, likes TCU. Obviously a lot of programs that are coming after him pretty strong. But in the end, I still think Alabama is in great shape with him. He comes to Tuscaloosa this weekend. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw a commitment, happen shortly after that. So those are some of the guys that we're paying really close attention to. I know we've talked about several other guys kind of throughout the year who could be close to making decisions, but like Denver Harris, who's a 5-star corner out of Houston, but it just keeps seeming like he's going to wait a little while longer before making a decision. So those are kind of the three guys I'm watching probably a little bit more closely than all the others right now.
Yeah. Get in the comments, guys. Let us know who you are watching closely, who you want to commit to Alabama next. And, a class that already has 15 commitments, up to number 5 in the country, really doing some big things here in these recent weeks. And, I want to talk about this upcoming weekend a little bit more. Obviously, some big names coming into town, but let's talk about this past weekend some more. Some guys from the 2023 class that really excited me. AJ Harris, Jaden Wayne in town, I believe Tony Mitchell as well. Some really talented recruits out of that class, some 2022 commitments as well. But talk about this past weekend, who Alabama likes seeing in town for Southern Miss.
Yeah, I think the majority of the top recruits who were in town were either committed or they were in the 2023 class, because you had guys like Jeremiah Alexander, Emmanuel Henderson, Antonio Kite, Kobe Prentice, all in Tuscaloosa last weekend. But then you also had some elite 2023 guys on campus. Jaden Wayne made the trip all the way from state of Washington, to Tuscaloosa. Now, this is an intriguing prospect because he's 6'6", about 250 pounds, plays on both sides of the football, tight end and defensive end. Alabama's recruiting him, play either or. He says he kind of prefers defensive end, but says that he'll play, really wherever he's needed. But visited Alabama back during June. Said, was really eager to get back to Tuscaloosa at some point. It just happened to work out that him and his family can make a trip to Tuscaloosa for that Southern Miss game. Just absolutely blown away. Just loves it in Tuscaloosa. Alabama's been able to recruit in every area of the country. There's 2 areas that they haven't really had as much success. Now, they've been able to bring kids in from these areas, but in terms of signing these guys, for some reason or another, they haven't been able to land them. That's from the state of Washington and also from Las Vegas. So we'll talk about a Vegas guy that's going to be here this weekend. But Jaden Wayne coming all the way from Washington, second trip to Tuscaloosa. He's certainly going to make a third, probably a fourth with an official visit. So would not be surprised if we saw Jaden Wayne as a part of Alabama's recruiting class next year as a big target, and certainly somebody that they've been keeping up with for quite a while after that visit to Tuscaloosa. Another guy that made the trip to Alabama was AJ Harris out of Glenwood School in Phoenix City. AJ is a extremely talented prospect. Number 1 cornerback in the country in 2023. Didn't grow up in Alabama. Actually, he's a military kid. So he grew up in Germany, lived a little bit in California. He's only been in Alabama for a couple of years. So it's not like he grew up this diehard Alabama fan, but he's been in Alabama for the last couple of years. And obviously, he's pretty familiar with the University of Alabama football program. Made a couple trips to Tuscaloosa during the summer, returned for the Southern Miss game. It's kind of shut things down in terms of doing interviews. Wants to really focus on his junior season. But I did get a chance to talk to his father, Daniel, on Sunday evening after the trip. And he told me, he said, everybody wants you to come to the big games and see all the atmosphere and how electric these places are. They specifically wanted to go to a game where they didn't think that there's going to be a lot of people there. They wanted to see what the environment was like when you're playing a non-conference team that you're 50-point favorites over. What was the crowd going to be like? And they were absolutely blown away. They said they couldn't believe it. They said it was extremely loud, a lot of fans, and they also had a good opportunity, on these big game weekends. These, the LSU game, Ole Miss game, Tennessee game. You have so many top recruits that come into town, and everybody wants all the, why isn't this kid visiting? Why isn't that kid visiting? We got to have these kids on campus on this particular weekend. Well, you also got to remember there's 150 recruits on campus, and there might be 50 of them that Nick Saban wants to meet with and sit down and talk to and try to recruit. You really don't get a chance to really spend a lot of quality time with those top end guys. Yeah, it's great to get them there for the atmosphere and see everything, but you really don't get a chance to spend a really quality time with these top recruits. So A.J. Harris had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with Nick Saban, with the defensive back coaches, and really enjoyed that whole experience. And, his dad said they were really blown away. Alabama's a top contender for him, and they're going to be a top contender all the way until the end of his recruitment. And then, one other guy I wanted to mention, Tony Mitchell, in-state, another in-state guy. I mean, this is a guy, you have A.J. Harris, who's the number one cornerback in 2023 in-state. You also have Tony Mitchell, who's the number 23 overall player, who's also a cornerback from Thompson High School. And obviously Alabama recruits Thompson really well. They have Jeremiah Alexander currently committed. I would be surprised if Peter Woods, Tony Mitchell's teammate and also classmate in that 2023 class, would be surprised if he's not a part of Alabama's class next year. So getting Tony Mitchell back on campus 2 times. He also attended the Mercer game. So getting him back on campus was obviously pretty big for Alabama this past weekend. He just dropped his top 7 a few days ago, and Alabama certainly still in the mix. And I think he's going to be back in Tuscaloosa this weekend for the Ole Miss game. So I think Alabama's in great shape for Tony Mitchell and obviously those other guys as well.
Yeah, really intriguing class, fun to keep up with, and a really cool story there too. You don't hear that a lot. Come for the Southern Miss weekend, come for maybe the Mercer weekend, Lower Key weekend, where you get to really experience the true Alabama. That's a cool story there. I want to talk about this weekend though, and obviously some big names coming. We're going to save Arch Manning here for just another second, but Defente Barnes out of Las Vegas, a running back in the class of 2022. Really interesting player here as well. And, another player that Alabama has been interested in for a while. We had a user just a bit ago ask about Defente Barnes. So what's the take here? Do we see Barnes maybe showing some more interest in Alabama? Another player too, we talked about him a minute ago, Devin Campbell coming to campus this weekend, a 5-star offensive lineman out of Texas. Now, obviously, Elijah Mitchell, and we talked about it earlier, this maybe not seems as realistic for Alabama now that they have another offensive line recruit in this class, but does Devin Campbell maybe show further interest? How's this weekend going to go for those two?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, and as Trey was telling you guys, hit that thumbs up button. That means a lot. Got 115 people watching right now. Give us that thumbs up. We got 1 like on there, so get those thumbs ups on there. Come on, it's pretty easy to do if you're watching. Didn't cost you a dime to do that. So give us a thumbs up, guys. In terms of the official visits, obviously some great 2 guys that are coming in for officials this weekend with Javonte Barnes and Devin Campbell. But with Barnes, I think Alabama certainly has made a significant run at him over the course of the last few months. Visited Tuscaloosa back in the summer. Many people don't realize that, and made a trip to Tuscaloosa, really liked it a lot, and they've been in contact ever since. And even though Alabama ended up losing Le'Veon Moss, they're still in contact with. I think Alabama's still certainly involved with Le'Veon, and they do have a commitment from Emmanuel Henderson. But they love Javonte Barnes and really want him as a part of this recruiting class. So can Alabama finally break the streak and break Vegas? Can they get into Las Vegas and get Javonte Barnes? That would be a big win for them. And they're going to get him on campus this weekend. So we'll kind of see where things go. There are a lot of people talking about USC with him, but with the way things are going out there with Clay Helton being fired, this kind of opens up the door with Alabama. Oklahoma was also really talked about, but he likes Alabama, likes Ole Miss as well. So he's going to have a chance to check out 2 programs that he's very interested in. And we talked about Devin Campbell a little bit more earlier, but yeah, I mean, it's obviously big to get these guys on campus for official visits. See what they think about the campus. Finally have a chance to sit down with coaching staff, Nick Saban, who is going to chance to sit down with Doug Marrone, the offensive line coach, and really just kind of get a feel for everything. Is this a place that he feels like he can come play and make an impact? And, can he lead the state of Texas and make his way to Tuscaloosa? So we'll see what happens. But those are 2 big official visitors. There was another one that was going to come in, Hero Canoe. Cano, I don't know. I'm probably saying it wrong either way, but he's a defensive tackle out of California, originally from Germany. He was originally supposed to come in for an official visit, but ended up, that decision got canceled, or the visit got canceled. I don't really think Alabama is going to be really pushing for him any longer, so kind of expect him to go elsewhere. But those are the two official visits. I don't think there's going to be any more additions right now. We'll kind of see where we're at here in a couple of days. We'll update on Bama Insider, but we should see a lot of unofficial visitors on campus. We're going to see a lot of commitments that are going to be back in town, guys that haven't visited Alabama yet this fall. Ty Simpson's going to make his way. He was supposed to come in last weekend, but ended up canceling. It's going to be in this weekend. You got Tyler Booker, his off weekend. He's really excited coming up with his father from IMG Academy. You have Jake Pope out of Buford High School, who has yet to visit this season. So he's going to be making a trip over to Tuscaloosa. Obviously, the usual suspects, Jeremiah Alexander, Emmanuel Henderson, Kobe Prentice, Antonio Kite, all those guys will be back at Bama this weekend as well. And we talked about some of the other uncommitted guys that are going to be in town. Barian Brown, big time wide receiver out of Nashville. Can he potentially make a commitment after this weekend? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, guys, keep getting those questions in. We're getting close to taking your questions. Just a couple more questions left here for Andrew Bone. And like he said, guys, hit that like. It really is free. It doesn't take much energy. All you have to do, go to the top of the page and hit that button for us. Subscribe to the channel and go to BamaInsider.com. Like Andrew just mentioned, we're going to have those updates coming out daily. So please go to BamaInsider.com and check out all of the content. But Bone, one name that everybody wants to know about, one guy that Alabama has showed some interest in, but everybody in the country has shown interest in, Arch Manning, the son of Peyton. And if you tuned into last night's Monday Night Football broadcast, Nick Saban, of course, on there, talking to Peyton and Eli, kind of talking about, these visits and stuff like this. This is a huge weekend for potentially Alabama, for the Manning family and Arch as well. How do you see this going down? And what do you think Arch's interest level is heading into the weekend?
Well, I'll let you slide there. He's the son of Cooper Manning, not Peyton, but that's all right.
Many Mannings at this point.
This is big for Alabama to get him back on campus, and obviously he wants to see what Ole Miss is able to do, because Ole Miss is a top contender for him. His father went there. His grandfather obviously is a legend at Ole Miss, but it's going to be interesting to kind of see how his recruitment unfolds. Obviously Alabama has a commitment from Ty Simpson. Will that play a factor in his decision? You just never know, how that may all unfold. But this is big to get him back on campus. Can they make a big statement win against the Rebels? There's a lot of talk that the Rebels are coming in to upset Alabama. I don't see that happening, but obviously that would give them some momentum potentially with Arch if they were to steal a victory in Tuscaloosa. But we know that Arch visited Alabama back during the summer, spent 3 or 4 days in Tuscaloosa, and now he's coming back for a game. I'm interested to see, are there going to be Alabama fans that are, in the student section that are going to paint on their bodies that, we want Arch like they did over at Georgia? I don't think I've ever seen that over at Alabama. Of course, Alabama hasn't needed, that much help in terms of, trying to land, top recruits throughout the year. So I don't know if we're going to see any freshmen be forced to dress up or paint their bodies this weekend and ask for Arch to come to Bama next year. But would not be surprised if we saw CBS zoom in on Arch in the recruit section this weekend. So we'll see kind of how that goes. But I know everybody wants to know, where's Arch Manning going to go? We don't know that yet. I mean, this is a long way to go in his recruitment. He's like several schools. Alabama is one of them. Ole Miss is another. Georgia, Clemson, Texas, LSU, a lot of schools. So it's going to be a long way before the end of his recruitment. But this is a second visit for Arch Manning to Alabama. So, Alabama is certainly a top contender for him.
Yeah, and Alabama doesn't have trouble recruiting these guys, but I don't think I'd be too surprised if I saw some chest paint going on this weekend in the student section. It's going to be fun to watch these commitments and these recruits coming into town as well. We're going to keep an eye on that. But Andrew, let's take some questions from the fans. You guys have really gotten in here and given us some great questions tonight. I want to start with Shamar James, and kind of where his recruitment is at this point, where you see him ending up.
Well, I think everyone was very shocked when he committed to Florida back in the summer, we really felt like he was about to commit to Alabama. Took that official visit to Florida, then boom, committed, and really hadn't looked back ever since. Now, we do know that he is continuing to talk to other programs. He's admitted that. He's talked about taking visits this fall, including Alabama and Georgia. So Alabama's still in the mix. They're still pushing. They really want him. He's been a top guy for them, top in-state guy for them, and they don't really lose too many in-state guys. And we saw that this year with Shamar going to Florida, Justice Finkley going to Texas, but Shamar James is certainly a top prize, and certainly somebody that they want to get. So we'll see if he ends up making a trip back. I believe he will. He can't use an official visit, but so he's got to come back for an unofficial visit. So I certainly expect him back in town for at least one more game. Maybe it's this weekend. He hasn't confirmed, but we'll see if he makes at least one trip, which he will, and we'll see if Alabama can get potentially flip him. But they're going to have a chance, and we'll see what happens.
You guys down there in Gainesville, Alabama is still trying to flip. Let's move it along to our next question. Jermaine Woods want to know about Walter Nolan. Is Alabama still in the running with Walter Nolan at this point?
Walter's he's an interesting guy to follow. He put out a top 3 with Georgia and Tennessee and Texas A&M, and then took the visit down to Gainesville for the Florida and Alabama game. Said that Florida was back in the picture. He's planning on visiting Alabama at some point this season, most likely for the Tennessee game or the LSU game, one of those two. Not exactly sure yet. I would be surprised if it's not the Tennessee game, but we'll see. I would not bank on him in Alabama's class yet. I would not say they're a top contender, but they are still recruiting him, and he is planning on still visiting Alabama this fall.
Yeah, really interesting recruit to follow, like you said. Quite the personality there, too. So we'll keep an eye on Walter Nolan. Let's move it along to Sam. Want to know about a player out of the class of 2024, quarterback Kamari McClellan out of Oxford. Do you have any information on Kamari and, maybe where his recruitment stands at this point, very early on in the process?
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in him right now, and he camped in Alabama during the summer and had a really good showing. And there are a lot of schools that are really interested in him and continuing to watch him. Now he is visiting Alabama this weekend for the Ole Miss game. So, Alabama really hasn't even, made this major strong push for 2023 guys yet. And so 2024 is still kind of a little bit on hold. Let these guys kind of get through their sophomore season, get to some junior days, go, get out there in the spring and then come back to camp during the summer, and then they start evaluating them a little bit more. But I mean, he's on the radar. There's no doubt about it. But in terms of is Alabama going to make a major run at him? I think we're just going to have to wait a little bit longer, let him develop a little bit more. But he's certainly a very talented kid, somebody that I really like a lot, and believe he could be one of the top 5 overall players in the state of Alabama.
Certainly. Thanks for the question there, Sam. Let's move it along to the running back room in this class. This question from Matt Swaggy. Will Alabama take another running back in the class of 2022?
Well, I certainly think that they want to. After losing Le'Veon Moss, they have a commitment from Emmanuel Henderson, who's having a great season. And he's still kind of listed as an athlete, and even though he's putting up major yards, this is a guy who could, end up being a wide receiver or potentially even a defensive back. You just never know, how his body's going to develop. But, as of right now, Alabama's probably going to bring him in as a running back, but they would like to add another running back. Defente Barnes coming in for that official visit this weekend. We'll kind of see how things go with him. I would not be surprised if, Bama could, really make a strong move for him. And they, like I said earlier, they're still recruiting Le'Veon Moss, even though it's hard to, sometimes see these guys who decommit from Alabama back in Alabama's class. It's happened many times before. We saw that with, Trey Sanders, with Xavier McKinney, Evan Neal. A lot of these guys end up back in Alabama's recruiting class. So we'll see kind of what happens with Le'Veon Moss over the course of the next few months. He's kept things really quiet regarding his recruitment. I mean, I don't think he's done a single interview since his commitment to Alabama. So nobody really knows exactly where he's leaning or what he's doing. Everybody just kind of assumes that it's either LSU or Texas A&M. But Alabama's still in the mix for him. Believe that, and we'll see if he makes a trip back to Tuscaloosa this season. Could potentially be back in Tuscaloosa this weekend. We don't know because he doesn't really talk to anybody. So we'll keep an eye on when he makes a trip back. But Alabama's certainly still involved, and I think that they will at least try to add one more running back. Not going to say they will, but I think they're going to try to at least.
I'm with you there. I think they give an effort at it, if nothing else. And, maybe Le'Veon Moss is part of this class eventually here. Just got time for a couple more. And, if you guys want to keep getting them in, we will take your questions tonight. But I kind of want to move it along to another flip question here. This one's about Damani Jackson from one of our most loyal followers, Jarvis Seskin, in the comments tonight. Does Alabama get Damani Jackson to flip?
We'll see. Yeah, I want to give you a hard answer. I want to say yes, or I want to say no. But a lot of these recruits, you just can't say yes or no yet. You have to kind of wait and see, how things play out in the end. Now, Damani is going to return to Tuscaloosa for the LSU game, here in November. So that's going to be a big visit for him. It's going to be his official visit. Now, he spent a couple of days in Tuscaloosa back in the summer. So he's familiar with the campus, familiar with the coaches. So now it's just getting him back for an official visit and seeing that game atmosphere. Obviously, USC in shambles right now, firing their head coach in Clay Helton. Dante Williams, interim head coach, blown out at Oregon State. Oregon State blew them out at USC this past weekend. So the chances of Dante Williams, I'm not saying he's not going to stick around as an assistant coach, but him being named the head coach, probably not going to happen. Kind of have to wait and see, but he's got a really close relationship with Dante Williams, who was his defensive backs coach at USC and also his area recruiter. So that's probably going to play a big role in his final decision. But Alabama is certainly a top contender for him. And I don't know. I'm not going to say. Back in the summer, I would have said 100% no, he's not going to flip. But now I'm a little bit more towards, he could potentially flip. I'm not going to say he will, but I think he could. So we'll see how the official visit goes in November for the LSU game. But Alabama is certainly a threat.
Hey, there's a chance. I think that, that makes a lot of Alabama fans happy just to hear that because, like you said, this summer, I don't think anybody thought there was a chance, but hey, there is still a chance out there for Damani Jackson. Bone, before we get out of here tonight, I want your final thoughts on the big commitment from Elijah Pritchett today, that offensive line group from that class, and really just your thoughts on the world of recruiting as Alabama looks for another huge weekend getting some guys on campus.
Well, I've always been a big fan of Elijah Pritchett. I think he's underrated. I think he's, one of the top offensive tackles in the country. Long arms, extremely athletic player. 6'6", close to 6'7", 295 pounds, can run, can get to the second and third level. Very physical lineman. This is somebody that is extremely talented, very light on his feet, and I think he's got a chance to really develop into a tremendous player for the Crimson Tide. I know they're extremely excited about him. Him and Tyler Booker are probably, they're both rated outside the top 100, at least on Rifles. I know people look at different websites and rankings. That's great. I don't care which rankings you look at, but know this. These are two elite players, two guys that Alabama considered priority targets from day one. They got both of them. They're extremely excited about what this class looks like on the offensive line. Can they potentially get one more? Maybe. And, certainly would be extremely exciting for them. But I'll tell you what, they are extremely happy today after the commitment of Elijah Pritchett.
Big one to get, and another big commitment. Alabama now up to 5th on Rivals.com. 15 commitments in this class. Andrew, thank you so much for getting on here, talking recruiting. Thank you guys for joining us as well, getting in the comments, sharing your questions. Before we get out of here, I need you to hit that like button for me one more time. And guys, please subscribe to the channel for more shows like this, all kinds of content surrounding the team, surrounding recruiting. You have it at BamaInsider.com. Go to the website as well to check out the recruiting big board. Go chat with other Alabama fans and just check out all the content. There's a lot out right now as we continue to get into this season. For Andrew Bone, my name is Trey Anity. We'll be joining you next Tuesday night. Talk some more recruiting, but until then, roll Tide.